Damien Barrett and welcome to Access All Areas. It was a huge Queen's birthday clash yesterday and it's the Pies who are celebrating after a very impressive victory. Matthew Lloyd and Jimmy Bartell, welcome.
Thanks, Damon. It was a complete performance from Collingwood yesterday. They were tougher at the contest, smashed Melbourne in the clearances, and then they were too quick on the outside and their skills are elite. And I don't know if they have any weaknesses at the moment, the Pies.
No, spot on, Lloydie. You mentioned the clearances. They're absolutely dominant there. We thought Max Gawn, Oliver, these sort of guys would probably get the edge there, but it was Collingwood and it was off the back of that man, Jordan De Goey. He's been much talked about, playing predominantly his football across half forward, I guess, but this was a pure midfield game in the first half. He was on world record pace with 10 inside 50s. We thought, geez, he's going to have 20 plus and smash all the records, but this sort of ball use and his explosion away from the stoppages was a bit too much for Melbourne in the end.
The class that he displayed early in the game when it had to be set up and the way he did it around the ball, Jimmy, did it surprise you?
No, not at all. We've seen glimpses when he's come in and spent, 5-10 minutes at a time.
This was sustained though, wasn't it?
This was sustained. He took a lot of centre bounces. Now, they had Sidebottom and Pendlebury come off the back of the square, and that allowed him to get hard forward after the stoppage and join in those sort of link plays, and that's why he had so many inside 50s and this type of play we're seeing on the screen now.
They had to send Jack Viney to him, Damo, to try and really nullify him and tag him, but didn't work either. It was a bit quieter after half-time, but it's just this sort of stuff. Like, I think Nathan Buckley's coaching extremely well. For 3 weeks he was a full forward.
Yep.
The third week probably didn't work. Now he's become a midfielder. So that 70% midfield, 30% forward.
And he had to manage that, Lord, didn't he?
Yeah.
Off the suspension the club gave him. So that was
right.
maybe the midfield time has only kicked in once he's got some match fitness. Mason Cox, Lordo, you'd love a full forward kicking goals. 5 yesterday, 11 for the season. Interestingly enough, after 2 rounds, he'd only played the 1 game and he suspended in round 2. He hadn't kicked a goal after 4 games of football this year. He's then kicked 11 in total, 5 obviously yesterday, but he has kicked 0 goals in 6 of those 11 games he's played, Lordo. Yesterday, though, the best game of his career.
I think we're so quick to judge, and I've judged Mason harshly earlier on as well, but he's a 40-game player and he never grew up on the game, so I think he's coming into the prime of his career to have a breakout game like that where you believe you belong. He was just too powerful, too big, too tall. They couldn't stop him.
The quirks of the game, the nuances of the game, was something he didn't seem to have up until maybe the last month. Is that fair to say?
Well, that's what was noticeable. Is he's actually judging the ball a lot better in flight and contested marking, and he's not short on confidence. Big Mace, as you see him in the bottom right there. Yeah, a bit of me time.
It's amazing though. He kicked 5 goals one day. No, he knows he belongs now. But I think there's so many blokes across the competition who can't kick straight.
Yeah.
But Mason is one of the most reliable kicks in the game as well.
And the combination is just working remarkably well, isn't it, with Jaden Stevenson? If he's not the rising star after 12 rounds, he's going to be very close.
Well, that's one bloke. We talk about belonging. This guy in his first year picked 6. He was, I guess, the pseudo full forward, and it was a clear plan all day. Try and get Neville Jetta back to the goal square, use his pace. Now, we know Nev's pretty quick, but Stevenson is lightning quick. They kept trying to drag him back. This play illustrates it perfectly. Comes out of the goal square as the full forward, but his elite pressure, he just kept harassing the Melbourne defenders and gave them no time and space to rebound.
He's changed Collingwood, really. Like, I think they've struggled for goals. I would have thought Darcy Moore would be their leading goal kicker, but Jaden Stevenson to come out of the blue like this and perform the way he has, just the speed. They're just allowing him the 50 because he's so quick. I don't know if there's a match-up for him because of his pace on the lead and getting out the back.
You mentioned Darcy Moore.
Yeah.
If he's fit, is there a spot for him in what lies ahead for the Pies this year, which now is very exciting for a Collingwood supporter?
I think Myercheck's role he'd be looking to probably fill in the coming weeks.
Yeah, it might be back forward because Scharenberg and Dunn are playing super footy down back, and you throw in Howe as another interceptor.
Another controversial sliding rule free kick yesterday, paid against Taylor Adams on Joel Smith. What did you make of it, guys?
Well, I think what the AFL's trying to do, while the rule's in, it's got to be paid because they're trying to actually change behaviour. I know it frustrates everyone, but they want players to stay on their feet. Now, Taylor Adams, look, it's fantastic, it's brave, it was smart, he got the ball out there.
It's also instinctive, Jimmy.
Yeah.
It's not to take the legs of Smith, is it?
No, it's not at all, but it's hard for people and it's hard for myself because what Adams did was fantastic, but they're trying to keep players on their feet and they're worried about them sliding in. So if Smith had not jumped over him, he probably would have had his legs taken out, and that's where potential to cause serious injury.
I'm with Jim. I think the umpires made the right call there. That's what the rule's there for. But in that circumstance, Taylor Adams was trying to do the right thing.
So the right free kick, yes and yes?
Well, while the rule's there, yes.
And keep the rule?
Yeah, well, yeah. So I think they're trying to do the right thing. They're trying to change behaviour. It's either, it can't be in between. It's either get rid of the rule and we go back to the old way, or you just keep paying those sort of free kicks.
Let's discuss Melbourne, the Melbourne Football Club. They failed on the big stage again. I'm one of those people who thought they could be top 4. I still believe that, Jim, but they were underwhelming yesterday.
They were, and also the personnel, the way that they rolled out there. So Jordan Lewis was fantastic down back, but also having Bernie Vince across half-back as well, I don't think that's the right look for them when they play the really good sides. And it's nothing against Bernie. I just think he better utilise in his old role, which is running with or playing in the midfield. Because you mentioned Viney had to go to De Goey, so it took away Viney's strength, and I think Bernie's really good at running with players.
So change that role now for all remaining games this year?
Yeah, because we also mentioned that Jetta was the only one that could go with Stevenson. Now, they've got Jaden Hunt in the VFL who's got that speed and can provide a bit of bounce off half-back. Well, there might be somebody else that can throw back there. It's just playing to Bernie's strengths, but also adding something different down back.
Yep. Saints had a horror weekend amongst a lot of bad weekends in 2018. Swans did a real number on them. They've got a game against the Gold Coast Suns on Saturday, and we'll touch on the Suns in a few moments' time, but the Saints have got real problems. They've decided as a footy club just to regroup after that horrific loss to the Swans and just focus entirely on what happens next Saturday against the Gold Coast Suns. But we know what could happen on the back of another loss this year if it does go that way for the Suns.
Yeah, let's take a look at some of the vision from the weekend. In that first quarter, they were like witches' hatch, and you hate using that word, but this piece of vision, it's the first quarter, they're 49 down to 1, so you think, OK, let's find a man, let's lock on. But watch the ease at which Sydney can just use the ball, Jim. This is uncontested marks. And we'll see Alan Richardson's response at quarter time addressed later, but this is just unforgivable. When you're down 49 to 1, that it can still be this easy.
Yeah, that quarter's on the players. Alan Richardson can give you all the instruction and the rev up, which we'll probably see shortly at quarter time. But you've just got to have energy when you come out at quarter time. You're not tired, you're not fatigued. Look at this. This is like training against the coaches.
The Swans butchered a ball inside their own 50, and they had room to move.
Hey, Damo, here is Richardson's response, but where does it start now for them? If there was to be a review at St Kilda, where would they start?
Well, there is a review. I mean, they're not using the word review, but Simon Leffeline started fresh in early January this year. He has reviewed all aspects of it. They're just not... Well, they're choosing not to use the review word publicly, but it's an ugly situation. And we go to a bit of media watch as we talk about the Saints. Missed 34% is what we saw on the AFL website a couple of days ago, and that was such a good idea that it was picked up by the Herald Sun, who thought not just the content of the article, but the headline itself was worthy of a rerun. So if you want to get your news first, get it to afl.com.au. Mitch Cleary having that story first. The Crows, though, they're actually having a real problem. 4 of their last 5 games have resulted in losses, 3 in a row. The only win in those past 5 games against the Bulldogs. Yeah,
and it doesn't look like it's going to get any easier for them. They've got the Hawks at the G, West Coast at home, Richmond at the G, who are almost unbeatable at the G, and then they've got the Cats at home, and the Cats play very well at the Adelaide Oval, and they also potentially could have another injury with Luke Brown. So the injuries keep mounting up to key personnel. They don't have the players who are on the fringe are getting hurt. It's all the key players. Yeah, they're just a workman-like side, though. They don't have too much of a spark to them. They lost Lever and Cameron, who are those spark type of players.
Do you both put a line through their premiership credentials now?
Oh, it's going to be very difficult. They might... look, if they don't win this week, they're going to be so far back, it's going to be hard for them to get back in the running. And now with... I don't think they make the 8 now, don't they?
Really?
I think they miss the 8. Brad Crouch missed too much footy. Rory Sloane's missed too much footy. They've mismanaged all their players. And this is what they're...
The grand finalists not making the finals, according to you. We spoke about Mason Cox a few moments ago. What about Brendan Cox from the Dockers?
Yeah, they've been crying out Fremantle for a player who can mark the ball inside 50. Since Matthew Taberner went out, they've just been rudderless inside forward 50. They tried McCarthy as their main man. He's a 3rd or 4th McCarthy. He's not a powerful player, but this man, he just is a beautiful mark of the football. He's got to work on his kicking, but his aerial ability, has made Fremantle a better side on the weekend. Is it because he's a bigger body, the more traditional size for a key forward, Lloydie? That's right, but also his aerial ability is his biggest strength, which is what Freo are crying out for.
They got the points narrowly in that particular game. One of my favourite players, almost my favourite player, Michael Walters, had a brain snap. You can see the time remaining. You can see the delicate scoreline from a Dockers perspective. This resulted in a 50-metre penalty, and we know that he's going to be missing a game of footy for what he did there to Kelly. It was unlike him from what we've seen since he's turned his life and career around. Yeah, I'm with you. He's an absolute star and fantastic to watch. But all of a sudden now he's a senior player because they've got so many players who are just starting out their career. And, in the balance, 2 minutes to go, anything could happen. He just needs to be a lot smarter than this. And brave by Ross to pull him off at this stage of the game. That's right. I think Ross did the right thing there, taking him off the ground. He was angry, he was frustrated. Ross is coaching for the future. But they play Carlton this week, Damo. So at Etihad Stadium,
that could be the difference whether they win or lose not having Walters. So that was poor by him.
Since Essendon regrouped a month ago, they had the one blip against Richmond, but they got it back on track, albeit against an ordinary opponent in the Lions.
If you let Essendon play in this fashion, you are asking for trouble. So McGrath's involved, Adam Sard's involved, Connor McKenna was involved.
So was this more the way Essendon were playing, or Brisbane allowed them to play?
I think the way Brisbane allowed them to play. So it wasn't the most convincing win. Yeah, they went to the Gabba and they got a win, but still, I want to see this in their next game. Richmond didn't allow this to happen. They got beaten up. They play West Coast on a Thursday night in their next big game. So I'm waiting for that one.
Can they play that way against West Coast?
I'm not sold on it.
Yeah,
because
right.
Good teams don't allow it. But what I want to give credit to is Kyle Langford and I'm trying to think of one other player that they shut down Dane Zorko and they shut down also Dane Beams.
Yeah.
So they were very honest through them. David Miles and Langford it was, and here's Mitch Brown. Should have straightened up, but how's the confidence of them at the Gabba? So good win. The last 3 or 4 weeks has been pretty good.
Okay, this weekend's amateur hour offering from the goal review system perspective came from that particular game. We see here Jake Stringer having a shot at goal, called by the umpire at the time that it was touched, and he wanted it to be reviewed. And interestingly enough, this was overruled effectively and given a goal despite the umpire saying it was touched. And we've learnt today that the reviewer was actually looking at a very different part of what we're seeing here on screen, that it was another player they thought that they were looking at from a touch perspective.
Yeah, I'm not sure which player they would be looking at after seeing that footage, but I thought the instruction had changed unless it was so glaringly obvious. Don't overrule the umpire. And you hear the umpire just say, I thought it was touch, I called it touch. So back the field umpire in there.
Absolutely farcical. Who are the reviewers, by the way? Do we know who they are?
Well,
because maybe
no, we don't, but they're making some horrendous
Yes.
decisions. Wrong buttons are being pressed just because they don't know which button to press. So anyway, it's a debacle. It has been. We've talked about it, I reckon, out of the 12 rounds, 7 or 8 times of just howlers. So they're introducing the howler to the game. The Suns, as we said, got the game against the Saints at Metricon on Saturday. It's crucial to them. They are in a world of hurt. They're in a mess. Their stats line now is historically as bad as it's ever been when it comes to last quarters.
Well, the fitness coach wouldn't like this stat because they cannot run out of last quarter. This is their last 3 last quarters. Didn't score against Port. Geelong 1 point, GWS 1 point. That's the lowest we've seen since Fitzroy back in 1907. If Tom Lynch is to leave, I was thinking about this last night, they would want to attract a couple of 24-year-olds for him. For the money that you'd pay him, get 22, 24, but who would want to go there at the moment? That's what I'm thinking. They need to show something in this last 12 games or 10 games to get a player to want to go there.
But then why don't they play Lyons and Barlow to provide a bit of cover to those young midfield types that they've got going?
They want to give the youngers just go clearly.
But you want to be able to score too.
Yeah,
2 points in the last 3-4 quarters.
And those stats provided by Statman Swamp boys. So, look, Jack Zeeble, again, we deal with AFL issues and safe workplace component to this conversation here. Crashes into the fence there at GMHBA Stadium. The LED lighting has clearly posed an issue as it's posed prior to this particular game. But look, it's a minor scratch in the context of a footballer's life, but he missed 9 minutes of football by way of being treated. Now, this happened earlier at Perth, the new Optus Stadium. Zach Tui and Mark Blicavs. Now, Blicavs required 14 stitches there for 2 different cuts. It's yet again an example of the AFL and the 2 clubs signing off on venues prior to a game without giving it due consideration.
No, we'll talk about it and nothing will happen.
Yeah.
That's what happened round 3. We all spoke about it. People threw their arms up, and look, we've got Jack Zeeble off the ground.
Was Perth's grounds fixed though, Optus Stadium? Was it?
They put a Perspex covering over it, which they'll need to do, and we'll be told that'll be done
Why
post the
wasn't it
event.
done at every ground?
Exactly right.
Yeah. We touched on Mark Blicavs there. You're emerging, Lordy, here as being his biggest fan in the competition. I know you haven't got him in the rolling All-Australian just yet, but I think after what he's done against Ben Brown, which has added to other scalps this year, it must be looming.
I think he's maybe tips out Alex Rance as we sit here right now for the All-Australian fullback. I think that no one can score a goal on him. You would hate to play on him. He's a running machine. You can't get off him, and he repels off halfback as well.
What does that mean for Taylor Henderson, Jimmy?
Well, one of them has to play forward because Black unfortunately got himself hurt. He was the extra defender back. So one of them who they decide is, and it's probably likely to be Harry Taylor towards the tail end of his career, goes and fills that role. Right. And maybe one of them goes forward and pushes Buzzer out just because of the experience. So there's your balance kept the same. But Mark Blitzarves is fullback for the rest of his football life for me.
Really?
Yeah.
I want to pump up Geelong, evolving as a side. They no longer revolve around Dangerfield, Selwood. I think the midfield's got deeper, and Hawkins coming up to centre forward is allowing Dangerfield to do greater damage out of the goal square.
Okay, well, both of you pump up Port Adelaide. It's been a strange year for them, but one thing they are doing is providing a good quality list of teams they're beating.
They've been fantastic. I think they're a tough side in the midfield, and Paddy Ryder coming back too has made an enormous difference.
He warmed into his work beautifully as the game went on, and he's so important to them. But I want to ask you about Chad Wingard, All-Australian half-forward twice, but on the weekend he played pretty much all midfield. If Port Adelaide to go deep in September, is he Chad Wingard the midfielder, or is he Chad Wingard the All-Australian half-forward?
I think it's a combination of both, Jim. I think he got a bit stale, probably wasn't working as hard as he could be as a forward. So great move by Ken Hinkley. Get him involved, get him around the stoppages. Best game I've seen him play in a long time. So I think it'd be maybe 70% midfield, 30% forward.
Well, we've self-proclaimed umpire and relation department here. We've had some beauties over the weekend, and obviously it's been a bit tense over the year, the umpires. But we saw Razor on Friday night. Just calm down, Sean Grigg. Mediation here.
Gave him a few life lessons.
Yeah, a few life lessons as we roll the tape here.
You need to calm down. Blood rule. Thank you. Just relax. Okay, we don't talk. We don't talk to one another like that. Right? It's okay.
He got a smile out of Sean Grigg. I wonder if he could get a smile out of Nick Robertson here from Brisbane, who was clearly about to explode.
I've been with Robbo as an academy role.
Yeah.
Look at that. Oh, see it again. Who does he think he is? Robbo.
It's good anger management there for Robbo.
Oh, his head's about to pop up there at the Gabba. But even the umpires sometimes get it wrong, and this is one chance they get it wrong and they can admit they're wrong. Josh Kennedy flipping the coin.
Coin toss.
Coin toss.
Please. Heads is a call. That's a tail. It's a tail. That's a head. Sorry.
It was only so easy to change 50-metre penalties, boys. Hey, thanks you too,
David.
Matthew Lloyd, Jimmy Bartel. And thanks for watching Access to All Areas. Next week, we are back at our usual time on the Monday, so we'll see you then. Have a good week. Goodbye.